Hello and welcome to Mental Health Mondays. We are so happy that you are here with us. I'm Atonte Myers, marriage and family therapist. We have Dr. Ricardo Whyte, who is a psychiatrist, and we are happy to be here and talk about mental health to continue our discussion about relationships, how to have a healthy marriage relationship. And is this our third or our fourth? Oh,
Oh,
are you muted? I think it's our,
no, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I want to look. It could be either one, but I was thinking it was at least the
I
third.
think it's third. Okay, I think it's third. I think you're right. It's the third. So we are happy to continue our discussion and giving you healthy information and tips that could possibly improve your marriage. If it's already good, it'll just improve it. If it's struggling, it will definitely help it in the state that it's in. And so we just want to know where you're watching from so we can say hi to you because we know that we are on the World Wide Web, the internet, and it goes all around the world. So we want to just know where you're watching from.
Hello, Nebraska. Hey, Deborah. Thanks for being with us.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Don't be shy, all the rest of you who are on. We
And
want
and,
to,
and besides
Canada.
the information we're sharing, of course, we love your questions as well. So
Yes.
get locked and loaded as well.
We are definitely taking your questions. Definitely. Live from New Orleans. All right, Robin. Nice to have you on.
Greenville, Missouri.
Mississippi, not too well, the state next over from where I am. Portland, Oregon.
Nice.
Portland is beautiful city. From
Michigan.
Michigan, Damari, I think. All right. Uh, okay.
Nice.
Paul and Rhonda from Pennsylvania. That's lovely. You guys are watching it together. I love that.
That's
That is nice. This is their couple time to watch to talk about to hear about relationships. That's wonderful.
I
All
see my
right.
Riverside, California. That's what I'm talking. God.
Yeah, you're right. They're right next door to you down there, right down there in Southern California, Florida. Beverly from Florida. Welcome.
Sandy.
Welcome, welcome.
Nobody's perfect, but hey, that's pretty good too.
Yes. So we are happy that so many have joined us. We'd like for you to share this link on your social media, where whatever platform you are watching on. Text a friend as we're talking and say, "Hey, I'm watching this program on marriage. It's live. You can even ask questions." And so, yes, definitely share the link. And I want to also ask you to follow us on Instagram. That's My Living Manna. This program is sponsored by the Living Manna Church. And so please follow us there if you don't already follow us on Instagram, and share the link and tell everyone that you are watching with us, and so that they can watch and ask their questions as well.
Absolutely.
So we have been talking about marriage, but specifically Dr. John Gottman's study on marriage. And again, he's been studying marriage for, I believe, if you have, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 34 years. And so he has the Gottman Institute. Him and his wife do that together. They even have certified Gottman therapist. I know that, and so it has really impacted the field of marriage and family therapy and counselors as well as they share on marriage, the information that he shares, and we want you to be blessed by that too. And so we're sharing it with you. And so we've been talking about that for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, and
Well, yes, 3 weeks.
is a mathematician,
Mm-hmm.
and he brought that love for concrete data and analytic thought to his research on romantic relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
he's famous for if he analyzed about 5 minutes of a couple interacting in his Love Institute. So
Right.
that was a research lab that he and his team developed, where they would monitor the physiological, expressions, and just and pay attention and record their dialogue and look at their interactions. If he analyzed 5 minutes of that interaction with 93, he was able to tell if they were going to be together 5 years later with 93% accuracy. So it was very, and so of course he was able to do that based on some of the things that would show up, some of the patterns in their interactions. And so he developed that, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, but 4 features that would show up in problematic relationship communication. And we talked about 2 of them 2 weeks prior. We talked about criticism, and how criticism is harmful when it actually attacks the person's character. And so we said last week that the antidote to that is the slow startup, the soft
startup. Yes.
And sis, maybe you want to explain what that means really quickly.
Yes, I do. And while I do that, it hasn't done it in a very long time, but the microphone, it's sounding poppy, as somebody had said. Like, I don't know if you could do your earpods. It's just kind of breaking up a little bit. So we definitely want to hear everything that you are saying. So
I just want to interrupt very quickly to
I see this is a surprise.
Yeah. Happy anniversary to my wife.
Thank you.
We do an extended anniversary, so it's officially
tomorrow. Yes.
Our anniversary celebrations last anywhere from 3 days to a week. So
happy anniversary, you two. And
thank you.
Atonte, how long have you guys been married?
24 years tomorrow at 6 o'clock exactly. If you want to remember, our wedding started at 6. I remember that.
As my wife would say, and they've been the best 24 years of his life, right?
Yeah.
Yes, they have.
Yes, thank you. When I saw that he was popping on, I was like, "Oh no, he's not supposed to pop on. Why is he popping on? He's not supposed to do this." So, well, thank you. I appreciate your happy anniversary. Happy anniversary to you too.
Thank you. And Doc, your microphone is sounding kind of choppy, so I'm not sure.
He was just about to fix that when you came on. So
is it testing 1 2 3? Testing 1 2 3?
It's still choppy. Yeah, it's still choppy.
I'm gonna depart and come back.
Yeah, let's come back and I'll talk about the soft startup. So back to Dr. Whyte's question, or not question, but explaining the soft startup. So, when you're approaching your spouse and you're you want to talk about something, you usually probably have an issue with something. You want to approach your spouse with what Dr. Gottman calls a soft startup. So you want to say, "Hey, honey, hey, sweetheart, hey, babe," whatever you call your spouse. Can we talk about something? There's something that has been bothering me, and use your I statements and say, "I feel," and you're just kindly approaching them instead of aggressively approaching them, yelling, criticizing, and you're cutting them to the core of who they are as a person. And he talks about how if you start with a soft startup, you will more than likely get what you are wanting and looking for, versus the hard startup, you're going to end up in a place that you don't want to be in. They're not going to hear you. The barriers are going to go up, and you're not going to get what the desired thing that you were wanting to talk to them about. So that is what a soft startup is.
And so to that, we added, as we discussed it last week, we added that be very careful, because sometimes your soft startup might be very harder than you think. It might be harder than you think.
True.
Because you might think, "Honey, I have this thing," and it might be the wrong time. They might not be in the position to hear it at this time. Even a soft start, they don't want anything to start any at all. So sometimes they just want a little bit of peace,
right?
If you know what I mean.
Yes.
So the idea just being one of the things I learned, as I mentioned many times, is I learned that just because I see something or perceive that something needs to be said, that doesn't mean that's the time to say it, you
Right.
know? And you can perfectly reserve the right to hold back before you address that issue. And even as a prelude to the soft startup, you can also do some recon. Okay,
Yeah.
so in the military, they talk about reconnaissance. So that's
Hmm.
where you can check in and see where that person is. You
Right.
know, did they have a hard day? Is there
Hmm.
something that's stressing them out? So,
Yeah.
what is the setting that you will be landing in, or that your feedback is going to be landing in? Because
Right.
sometimes the setting might be hostile to your landing, and it might be worth you just keeping it to yourself just
Hmm.
for a moment. So we just want to alert you that sometimes your softness is not quite as soft as you might think it is, and
Right.
sometimes it's worth just holding back. What are your thoughts, sis?
I think that was excellent that you shared that. There's been times that I've shared with my husband, I was like, timing is everything. So, like, what you're saying is not bad, but just consider the timing, like where I'm at, what I'm kind of going through right now. And then he'd have to agree, like, okay, this probably isn't the best time. So, yes, I completely agree with what you're sharing. Timing is everything. And you have to get to know your spouse to know, like, you know them. So you, like you said, you know, if you can tell just by looking at their face if they had a harder day at work, as they come through the door. If they just need you to be chill and relaxed and just spend time with them and just relax. And then at another time where, they're not either so stressed or overwhelmed or just didn't have a bad day at work, then you can have a soft startup.
Startup.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason we're so happy to have these discussions is because it's so subtle.
Yeah.
So sometimes by looking at your spouse, you will not be able to tell where they are. They may
Mhm.
look perfectly calm, and it's one of those tip of the iceberg situations where there is so much more going on under the surface that you would learn if you even did some kind of a recon, as I'm putting it. Honey, how are you? Where are you? Are you hungry? Are you tired? Are you
Mhm.
stressed? Is something bothering you? Okay. All right. Now, maybe once you find out everything is okay and they're actually in a very, very good space, maybe now you would think about employing that soft startup
Mhm.
rather than that harsh criticism. And of course, scripture talks about how a soft answer turns away wrath,
Yeah.
and grievous words stir up anger. So
Right.
I'm more than likely paraphrasing. So
Right.
let's be careful with criticizing.
Oh.
Well, and next we talked about contempt,
Mhm.
attacking a sense of self with an intent to insult or abuse. Okay, so just having that sense of disdain, um,
Mm.
that being one of the horsemen that he
Right.
talks about. And you know that as we interact in relationships, at times the wounds can start to stack up
Mhm.
until you start to feel some real contempt for the
Right.
person.
Mhm.
And you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You even think about their name and you just get kind of angry and sort of disdainful.
Mhm.
And that can be one of the things that hopefully would signal you to say, look, we are going down the wrong path. This is not the direction that I want to go in. I need to address this.
Right.
And whether it's therapy, whether it's counseling, whether it's mentoring, but it's like that feeling should trigger in you. This is not what I want. I don't want 10 years of feeling contemptful, because that, of course, will progress to other things.
Mhm.
And so one of the cures to that is building a culture of appreciation. Okay.
Mhm.
A lot of times when I'm reminded of my wife's faults, yes, believe it or not, when I'm reminded of one of her faults, I'm inspired, to actually think about something to commend her on.
Right.
Because I realize that if I adopt an attitude of appreciation, it can actually, uh, it's actually a choice what I choose to focus on,
Right.
because people are not all bad or all good. And so you literally have a choice. What are you going to choose to focus on? And so sometimes noticing a fault I learned to let that trigger, you know what, let me pay you a compliment. And the reason for that is connected to what we were talking about before, and that is so often, instead of a person needing a word of criticism, what they actually could use is some acknowledgement, some validation, and some commentary that actually you value them. And I've found so often, like, she would put a smile on her face, you would see her soften, and you
Right.
would see that she really was
She
in need of
appreciated
some
you. Yes.
affirmation.
Yes.
She didn't need a criticism, right? Or that sort of, contempt or noticing of her faults. She wanted me to notice her value, if anything. What are your thoughts, sis?
Right. Well, my thoughts are, unfortunately, your mic is cracking again, but but I wanted you to get
Oh,
through your
Lord.
whole statement because the having a culture of appreciation within your marriage is so very important, and so I agree with everything that you said. As you're, I don't know, I'm gonna figure out the mic situation, see if it can stop crackling as much. Something else that Dr. Gottman talks about is just solve your solvable problems, meaning again with the soft startup, as we already stated, and that's just by stating your feelings without blaming and express positive needs. So you're not blaming, but you're just expressing your needs, and so that is how you can also approach the soft startup along with the other things that we shared. Um, you can always be willing to compromise. Always be willing to compromise. Be willing. That doesn't mean if both spouses are willing to compromise, then you're kind of like, which way are you going to go? Because you're both willing to compromise, but at least have that spirit and willingness to do so. And that goes both ways, meaning like you both should be in that space willing to compromise. So it's not always one person compromising and the other person is always getting their way. There should be a joint or a 50-50, if you will, but just always having that spirit and willingness to compromise. That's very important, and also be tolerant of each other's faults. I like to say it this way. I mean, when I work with couples, I like to say, extend grace to your spouse, just the way God extends grace to us. Extend grace to your spouse. They're not perfect. They make mistakes, especially if they are sincerely either apologetic or it's not even something that I necessarily have to say sorry for, but they just made a mistake. Just understand and remind yourself that they're human, and just you know see that they've have just be considerate of their faults or their things that sometimes can easily annoy you, but just be tolerant of them, and show grace and extend grace to your spouse. So again, these are the things that we're talking about this evening. Dr. Gottman, he in his study, what he studied is he studied the masters and the disasters. The masters are the marriages that made it, and the disasters are the marriages that did not. So the things that we're going over, that we've been going over for this is our third week now, for the last 3 weeks. These are the things that the masters had a part of their marriage, and the disasters did not do these things. And this is the name that he gave them. So I'm not calling anybody a disaster or anything like that, but these are just the way that he categorized it. So these are the characteristics that people whose marriages that made it. These are the elements and things that they had in their marriage. Hoping we get Dr. Whyte back here pretty soon. Okay, I think he's trying to come in now. So hold on just a moment. Okay, there you go. You're back. Hopefully you're not crackling. You're back. Are you back? You're back. I see you.
Yeah, interrupt you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's not crackling. There's a
Beautiful.
question. Yeah, I'm going to bring you in too, but I just want to see what this question. What if your wife have a routine and didn't want to be bothered. I'm assuming. What if your wife have a routine and don't want to be bothered? I probably need a little bit more clarification. Maybe Dr. Whyte, I don't know. I don't know if you know where Anthony is going. Anthony, can you give us some more clarity on your question?
Yeah, that would probably. He's doing that. We'll go to Edna. Elements.
Edna.
You are. Edna, we're talking about the fact Dr. John Gottman up in relationship are poor communically, and so criticism, contempt, defense, and this week we're going to go into.
Dr. Whyte, I'm sorry, you're not crackling or anything like that, but you're just cutting, like we're hearing every other word. So I don't know, that wasn't happening before. It was just the crackling sound, but now it's every other word. I know this is not okay, because we want to hear everything that you're trying to say. It's not. As he's trying to fix that, Edna, but what? Okay, go ahead.
How's this? Any better or no?
Right now, that was okay, what you just said.
Yeah, I'll listen to what you're going to say, Edna.
Okay. So we're talking about the things that we're talking about are from Dr. John Gottman, and we talked about the masters and the disasters, which I was just sharing. So the masters had a spirit of a culture, I should say, of appreciation within their marriage. So they told each other that they appreciated. Really, what the masters did is they say one appreciation a day, at least. Like the spouses tell each other the one thing that they appreciate about them a day. They do that. The characteristics also is love maps, and a love map is just like a map. We have GPSs now, but I guess but back in the day when people needed maps to be able to drive somewhere to see their direction. So a love map is a direction or leading you into your spouse's heart, just to see what just so that you know them. You get to know them in such a deep, intimate, personal way. Like, what all their desires and their dreams are and the things that they love and those types of things. You may think that them pretty well, but they change over time. And so always just asking questions and spending time together to really connect and to know each other in that very personal way is considered love maps. And then we also talked about last week about the 2-hour date night that the masters do every week. They do a 2-hour date night, which there's no kids. No kids can be there. It's just for the spouses. And also the 2-hour business meeting that Dr. Whyte seems to really like. 2-hour business meeting every week, where you're just talking about the things that make the family run, the children's things and financial things and those types of things that run the family. And then outside of that, when you make sure that you do all of those business meeting type of things within that 2-hour time. And again, this is not doesn't have to be a rigid 2 hours, but just fulfilling the things that you guys need to talk about. And then outside of that, when you're spending time together, you're not just talking about bills and the children's teacher and the school and all this stuff. You're actually connecting because you've already dealt with all of those things during the special time. So that's just some elements of what Dr. Gottman has found for the masters, for the marriages that have made it. But go ahead. I think you're good.
I'm good. Well, just to build off of that, what to is being intentional about your community. When you're in a discrete period to address uncomfortable conversation in so many, it's like protected time when you're interacting. Don't have to like bleed into that per se. Circumscribed time. There's a period to address that issue. So that can be tremendously advantageous. An even bigger point, and that bigger point, not every moment of your interaction to be littered with certain conversations. One of the things that will happen is conversations you will never resume. There are some conversations you will never resume. Anytime you bring it up, those same merge. Like you'll never be on the same.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't develop the times, we don't need to discuss. If you don't learn what are some of the little triggers that lead you down that path, hey, we're not going to go down that road.
Doctor,
go ahead.
It's happening again. And people are saying they're getting other. Okay, I know some people are saying they're getting every other word, and what you're sharing is so good. So maybe just go completely out again and come back in. We'll do it as many times as we have to so that they can hear all the good things you're saying, because they don't want to miss it, and I don't want them to miss it either. But I want to answer this question. Let's see. If I want to have a conversation with my wife and she is occupied on the computer, what must I do? So don't have a conversation at that time because she's occupied on the computer, right? But ask her, say, honey, when is a good time that, we can, I'll use the word schedule. It sounds so formal, but we can schedule a time where, I can talk to you. I just want your undivided attention. And if you can make it an even easier softer, I should say, startup than that, but how, you know how to approach your wife in a soft way, but you definitely just want to schedule a time. You don't want to have the conversation while she's on the computer because her mind is somewhere else, but just schedule a time that you both agree with. That would be my encouragement to you. Let's see. We bring Dr. Whyte on. Okay. Did you see the question? Maybe you have something else to share, or maybe you want to go back to what you were sharing so that they can get what you were saying. They want you to restart that. Do you remember what you were saying?
What were we? Oh.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about. I hope I'm coming through clearly now.
You are right now.
I was talking about how one of the things that's great about having a specific time where you talk about the bills is it allows you to have comfort that you don't have to talk about finances all the time or be hijacked by it, because you have a specific time where you're going to discuss it. But there's a wider principle where you need to not have certain discussions basically taint all of your interacting. You should have periods of interaction where your focus is on valuing each other, loving each other, and not letting triggers send you down roads to conversations you will never completely agree on. Don't be deceived. There are some contentions that you're just going to be on the opposite sides of, and so it's important to not to have protected periods where the focus is we're gonna have a good time. We're gonna build each other up in this period, and we're not gonna tear each other down. And to the question, if I want to have a conversation with my wife and she's occupied on the computer, what must I do? This is one of those like questions where in therapy, where it's like you're like, well, you tell me, tell me more about that, because it's like, I guess the additional thoughts about it, basically the response is in those responses. As far as, if you're wanting to have a conversation with your spouse and she's on the computer, I mean, on the surface, obviously you're wanting to speak to someone when you have their full attention. So the goal is, I would say under the surface, the goal is to make things to where your wife wants to have the conversation with you. How do you change the dynamic so the person is wanting to get off the computer so that they want to talk to you? How would you leverage that? Could it be they don't want to have the conversation that they're actually running
Right. Are they using the computer as like,
as a
yeah,
shield?
as a shield? That's possible. That's possible too. Mm-hmm.
The question is more, hey, how can I do a soft startup? How can I make the conversation more what the person wants to actually hear?
Right.
But the bottom line is that that's a more complicated question, and
Mm-hmm.
we would need more details. But I hope what we mentioned so far is helpful.
For sure.
So
For sure.
so did we
Yeah.
talk about this last time?
I'm sorry. Did we talk about, say that again?
Defensiveness? Did we talk about defensiveness last time?
We talked about, well, the stonewalling and defensiveness. Yes. I mean, we've mentioned that from the first program we did on Gottman. So it definitely was mentioned, but if you were doing a review, because you did criticism and you did contempt. So
So
if you were reviewing, you can review defensiveness and stonewalling as well.
so with defensiveness, I mean, honestly, we see it with children a lot, where you say, hey, you did this, and they're like, no, I didn't. You know, no, you did. No, I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And we've also experienced it with people, where you say, hey, you hurt my feelings. No, I didn't. And it's really important to remember that when we are communicating with one another, what we are really appealing for and what we're really doing is we're making a bid to be heard.
Right.
It's a request, it's an appeal that your partner hear you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't feel like you're being heard, if two people don't feel like they're being heard, guess what they do? They escalate the volume. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, that can get dangerous really fast.
Right.
And part of how you can, reduce the volume in a healthy situation, it's when you signal to the person very clearly that I'm hearing you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And defensiveness is one of those ways, one of those tools to really reject that bid to be heard. And then more importantly, taking no ownership of something that with any serious reflection, you may realize, no, I do have something that I can take responsibility for. If nothing else, sometimes you can at least repeat back to the person, look, man, I'm hearing you say.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing you say.
Right.
And for those of you who are like making a statement and you're making that bid, sometimes it's worth even asking the person, hey, what are you hearing me say?
Yeah.
What are you hearing me say? Because that can sometimes be the pattern interrupt that allows you to then say, okay, you know what? Let me make sure I'm hearing and let me make sure I'm tracking with the person. What were you going to say?
Right. Yeah, I agree with everything that you just said. And I think Deborah has a great question. And unfortunately, it's starting to pop a little bit. It's not every other word, but it's just starting to pop a little bit. But you can come in, come back out. It seems to work. And I can I can answer Deborah's question and then you can come back and share your thoughts on it as well. Okay, so Deborah, that's a great question, actually. And I like actually what you put in there. Just to read the question out loud, how can you keep yourself from getting defensive? I always view comments as negative and tend to get defensive. I know it's because of my past. What's a good strategy to not? So I love that you recognize that you're aware. I mean, you're one step closer to getting better with this just because you're aware enough to know to say, hey, I do get defensive. I view everything as negative and it's from my past. I spend several sessions with people for them to get to the point where you're at and you're already there. So you can see like, hey, I'm defensive and I know it's from whatever issues I've experienced in the past. And so that is the beginning of that process. So I like it's called like a negative core belief. So at any time that somebody, let me bring Dr. Whyte in here as well. Anytime somebody approaches you to say something that is either like whatever it may be, they're, I don't want to use the word complaining, but just bringing it, even if it's a positive suggestion or whatever, you view it as negative. So your negative core belief, those comments that the person is making, is filtered through that negative core belief. And you mentioned in your question, question, that it's from your past. So you being aware of whatever happened to you in the past, you being aware of that and what that negative core belief is, then you can begin to start to, I like to say, dismantle that negative core belief. But this kind of work typically can be done with a mental health professional and with a counselor that will really help you get through that type of situation, so you can change that negative core belief. And so when people approach you, you won't always automatically go negative with it, but that you can actually process what they're saying in a healthy way. So my encouragement is to, talk to somebody in your area, mental health professional that can help you in that area, because they can do that. They can help you with that.
Yeah, Deborah, this is a fantastic question. What I would add to what my sis just said is, one of the things that positions us for defensiveness is our kind of core belief that to admit that you're wrong shows a sign of weakness. We have some very problematic beliefs as it relates to relating to one another. We feel like if I admit I'm wrong, that means I'm weak. Or if I admit I'm wrong, that somehow is losing the argument. And so you'll see people fighting to the death to refuse to accept any responsibility whatsoever for what is likely their role. And the truth of the matter is, we've kind of inverted the reality, because nothing looks weaker than when a person is wrong and they're refusing to acknowledge it. Like, that really makes you look weak. And actually, when people have the courage to acknowledge that they are wrong, that is a tremendous step in the direction of appearing powerful at times. So we haven't inverted, like we've inverted the perspective and the core belief. So that once you recognize that me acknowledging that I'm wrong, especially when I can see it, that's not a sign of weakness, that's a sign of strength. Now you're more open to doing it. Also, when you view your relationship as a collaboration and that you're not combating against one another, now, as opposed to you both being at odds with one another, no, you actually join each other and you attack the issue. You don't attack one another, you actually attack the issue. You're actually partners. That's when you don't necessarily feel as much like I need to defend myself. And that can also be a strategic approach, because it's powerful when you can sincerely and truthfully take responsibility for your role in an issue. What are your thoughts?
It's going to sound cliche, but I completely agree with what you said. Yes, it is powerful when you can take ownership, at least for, like you said, for your part. I mean, both spouses may have brought their own I mean, they may be at fault in the situation, both, but at least take responsibility for your part in a situation. And that just dropping those defensive walls can really just prepare the space for the other person to drop theirs. And it just gives a healthy space where you can talk and to come together. It could be the beginning of that. There's another question, a good question. And I think I'm gonna let you go for it first. Maybe
have ourselves a zinger. My hubby's TV habit is sometimes more than I can bear. And it sounds like it's to the point where you mentioned that you actually, have thoughts about leaving, and he doesn't seem to care. First of all, I'm so sorry that you are experiencing that kind of rejection, sorry that you're experiencing that. I got to tell you that there are times where, personally, when I've been especially frustrated with my spouse, as I've considered how to approach it, I ask myself the question, what if this is how I frustrate God. Um, so, for example, if she wasn't paying me any attention, I wonder, hey, I wonder if this sort of patterns how is this the experience I'm giving God per se? And if I am giving God this experience, how would I like Him to deal with me? How would I like Him to address this issue? And I say all that to say that it can be really helpful to kind of shift perspectives. Now, we again don't know the situation, so it's like we really can't actually tell you what to do or how to even handle it because we're not in that situation. But I will say at times when my spouse has frustrated me, I've kind of like shifted over and said, um, how am I like that? What might I be doing, and how would I want to be approached? But yeah, by the time you're starting to think about leaving, that would definitely seem like a good space to consider getting outside support, including psychotherapeutic or
Right.
what have you support.
For sure.
Sound pretty serious by the time you're thinking about it. And even feeling that the person doesn't care if you do, man, how devastating is that?
Right. Yeah. And I hate to tell you this too, Dr. White. It's just starting to pop again. But because going out and coming back in works, I'll let you do it. And you've answered that question, which is great. And I'll just add some other things to it. And then when you come back, I'm sure we'll have another
I'll be
question.
right back.
Okay. This hasn't happened in so long. Like his microphone hasn't been popping. But Donna, I just want to add to that is that where it says it seems that he doesn't care. I think if you look at the four horsemen, where we've been talking about with Dr. John Gottman, it sounds like he may be in a space of stonewalling where it appears that he doesn't care. And so he's in that space. I've said this before, when people are arguing, like, at least it shows that they still care and there's passion. When someone is just like, tuning you out and like just putting the wall up, they can be in that space. And so I agree with Dr. Whyte that to give your marriage the 100% chance that it deserves, to definitely, before you make a decision of leaving your spouse, to definitely seek out, counseling from a marriage therapist. Hopefully he's willing to do that. But I've seen marriages that end up in a divorce that didn't have to go to a divorce, but they weren't willing to get counseling on any level to talk about it, and they just went straight for divorce. And so if you are, still care and want to see this marriage work, and that he's willing to at least give it a try, I would, definitely encourage seeking out counseling for your marriage before you make that decision.
Absolutely.
But there was some more questions here before you left out. Oh, here's one. I thought that there's the one. And I'll let you take that one too.
What can I
Go ahead.
now that I stop believing in God? What can I do now that my husband has stopped believing in God? So it sounds like in you asking the question, you're experiencing some kind of distress in that he doesn't believe in God. So what's interesting to me is how compelling a good lifestyle is in making the ultimate argument for Christ and for God, for that matter. Yeah, it just amazes me how being a good person, being loving, being kind, being ethical, being all those things that we're taught, to be as Christians, they're the most compelling argument. When I look at how Christ interacted with people, it was so penetrating it kind of didn't matter what they believed. Whether it was the woman caught in quote unquote adultery, or, a person who was experiencing paralysis. Like, when you think about where those people probably were in their belief system at that time, I would think it's fair to say they probably weren't too excited about God in those, positions. And yet what he did was he met them where they were. He ministered to them where they were, and it was intending to impact them outside of even the context of religion. Like, when you really look at what Christ did, obviously it was Christ, so it was Christian by nature, but he didn't do it sort of like, let me be Christian. It was, let me be loving. Let me be loving. Let me strip this approach. Let me strip this intervention of religion and theology, and let me make it the language of love. And it was a difficult language to resist. It was a very difficult language to resist. Now, obviously, again, this is why we can't speak to situations, because, we don't know whether it's abuse, or we don't know what's going on.
Right.
But what comes to my mind as I think about the model that Christ embodied was he lived the language of love. His interventions were potent because they scratched the proverbial itch. They addressed the particular issue. They spoke to the person's need. And the question then being, what is it that spouse needs? What is that need that, if fulfilled, it would reach them? That really then becomes the question. Okay, my husband has a learning disability, anger issues, and he's committed adultery in the past. He's unwilling to change. He's not physically abusive, but I've been thinking of divorce. I'm at a loss. Jessica, this certainly does describe a very difficult situation, and it's my sincere hope that you are getting some kind of support as you go through such of a challenging situation.
Yeah, you definitely have to get support, and to to be able to make that, again, that decision needs to be, after, I believe, consulted with some type of counseling, whether that's pastoral or reaching out to a mental health professional, marriage family therapist, as you are trying to process the situation that you are in. But we don't, of course, we don't know. We can't tell you what to do. And actually, a therapist can't tell you, what to do, but they will have more information that you can give in a confidential setting to be able to help you as you process what's going on in your marriage.
Because really, a therapist helps you identify what you want to do.
Right.
They help you to do it in a context where they can help you identify clarity.
Right.
On the given issue, because no, the goal is not that an idea is placed on you. The goal is to help you clarify and unearth your ideas, and what you're convinced would work for you. So again, it's my hope that you get the help that you need to navigate a challenging situation.
I think this question is something that people say a lot. What if my spouse is not willing to get professional help? Then you get professional help for you as you're dealing with that situation. Because that's, it's not easy to, when there are problems in the marriage, but one spouse is not willing to go in to help you to be able to deal with the marriage. Individual counseling can be, life changing for you. That can be where you will get support. And if you're a Christian, then you pray for your spouse to see that you guys are needing some support and assistance in your marriage.
Yeah, definitely. addressing your own healing can be an important step in marital healing. It's not necessarily the last step, but it can be an important first step, is addressing your own healing. So great point, sis.
Yeah. Yes, there's I can see, I mean, there's a lot of statements and questions and people coming. I mean, there's a lot of talk about divorce tonight, that people are wanting a divorce. There's a lot of it in the chat. And so we were sharing Dr. Gottman's research and what has been very successful in his research and studies, in hopes to encourage and assist with techniques that you guys can add into your marriage when both spouses are willing and wanting to do so. But there are situations, a lot of situations that I'm hearing in the chat that you probably hear us repeating, like, you need to seek out, some relationship counseling within your area, mental health professional that can help you. Because again, as Dr. Whyte has said, and I have said, in session with a marriage counselor in the confidential setting, you'll be able to be more transparent and, say all the things that need to be said, and they can help you work through that process. And it's possible to save your marriage, even in very difficult circumstances. And sometimes the marriage has to be let go, but that just has to be, unfortunately, it's not going to happen in a setting like this. And so we're always encouraging you to get connected to someone that is in your area, that you connect with, a therapist that you connect with that can help you with these types of situations.
Yeah, so our goal is to provide you some preventative tools,
right?
So that things at times don't get to that space. One of the last ones was stonewalling.
Yes.
Stonewalling is when the person withdraws in order to avoid conflict. They're just so tired of fighting, they just withdraw, and you're talking to them, but they're not even responding. Now, think about when you're making a bid to be heard, and the person is just basically ignoring you, how painful that can be. But then why are they doing that? Because they felt chided with so much that now this is how they just kind of disengage. So the goal is to, before it gets to that point, learning tools and recognizing those other horsemen as they showed up and addressing the issue, getting the professional support so it doesn't get to that stage.
Yes.
Excuse me.
I know we're almost out of time and your mic is popping, but because we're almost out of time, I'm going to leave you there because we only have 3 minutes. But I wanted to, this question, I think that's something we cannot just ignore. But in the case of abuse, or if you're being abused, and I don't know if it's emotional abuse. I don't know. I'm maybe assuming it's physical. Maybe you could clarify. But if it is physical, of course, your life is in danger. Definitely finding resources in your community, women's shelters. There's different resources that are available to you. And so that is something, if your life is in danger, that you definitely should connect with. But even working, with that said, I still believe that you also should work with a mental health professional with that. Studies show that sometimes, not sometimes, when a spouse leaves a violent situation, their life is usually more in danger because it's, the spouse is enraged that they left. And so it's a very, delicate situation that you could work out with your mental health professional, because there needs to be a safety plan so that you are safe. The most important thing is that you're physically safe. And so that needs to be worked out, again, with your mental health professional, because we don't know. We are not your mental health professionals and we don't know the situation. But if your life is in danger, there's, of course, there's women's shelters and things of that nature that are available in your area.
With that, thank you guys so much for your questions. Am I still popping, sis?
Yeah, you're popping. You're popping.
Well, I'll let you conclude for us.
Okay. I'm sorry you're popping. I'm sorry. You can still stay on the screen and smile, and you can do thumbs up and all that stuff. Right there, you weren't popping. There was something, I'm sorry. There was something that I think Gigi said that I thought was a good comment. And it's, yes, I think it was sometimes, I can't find it. I just saw separation. And sometimes separation um, is, the best thing in a situation. But again, that's for you and your counselor, your therapist to work through and process and see if that is the best situation. We definitely had a lot of questions and comments on this topic. So we're going to prayerfully see where we're going from here. Tonight was the last night we were going to talk about this. I just feel like there's such a need, but we will prayerfully consider where we're going next. We have 2 weeks to do that. There will not be any mental health Mondays next week because it's Labor Day. And then the following week, we also have something we also have something that we're doing that we won't be able to be on as well. So 2 weeks from today, or should I say 3 weeks, we'll actually be back because in 2 weeks, we'll still not be here. So 3 weeks, we will be back with Mental Health Mondays, and we will let you, for those who have signed up to get alerts and notifications for what Living Manna Church is doing. I'm wondering if I can put that up on the screen. Okay, I probably can't. We miss our producer, but Amber will be back with us then. So, okay, if you've signed up to get alerts, we'll let you know what the topic will be. So you'll know way in advance of what we're talking about, the discussion. So, okay. There it goes. Dr. Whyte did it. Perfect. He can't talk, but he can do that. Okay. So text LMOC and put the number 84576. That will sign you up. You'll get all the notifications of what Living Manna Church is doing. And that way you'll know what mental health Mondays they're doing, all the other programs that you love, you'll know what they're doing as well and when they're coming on. So again, I don't know if Dr. Whyte, you're down there, can you put our emails in as well? If you need to email us and we can assist in helping you connect with a mental health professional in your area, email us and we'll see how we might be able to assist in that as well. So we look forward to seeing you in 3 weeks from now. We thank you for watching and being part of the program. Thank you for all your questions and comments. And again, if you feel like you are needing more services for your relationship, please reach out to your local therapist in your area to assist in your marriage and your relationships. All right. We hope you have a good evening and we'll see you in a few weeks. God bless.
All right. Take care.